Hey folks, welcome back to Crew Chat. So one of the things that makes wine kind of intimidating is the fact that it seems to have its own language. There's this secret vocabulary when you read a label or a wine list, and you see words like bright or austere, and you wonder what that means. And they don't really make a lot of sense unless you know the code. So I think we need to dive in and figure some of that out. Let's start by tackling one of the most common yet misunderstood wine words, and that is dry. All the time you hear people talking about, oh, I like dry red wine, or you read a wine label and it'll say dry on the back. What does that really mean though? Well, it starts with the grapes. So grapes have a very high concentration of sugar. In fact, they have probably the highest concentration of sugar out of any fruit, which is what makes them perfect for winemaking. Remember, wine is fermented grape juice. And during fermentation, yeasts eat the sugar and convert that into alcohol. So in order to get that 12 to 15% alcohol that you find in table wine, you need a lot of sugar, and grapes have it. Now usually the winemaker will let the yeast eat all the sugar and convert it all to alcohol so there's no sugar left in the wine. And when this happens, we call the wine dry. So, a dry wine is just a wine with no residual sugar after fermentation. That's basically it. Now, this can be confusing because a lot of people use the word dry to describe a mouthfeel of cottony or stringent drying that you get from some wines that are high in a chemical compound called tannins. But that's completely different, has nothing to do with sugar or alcohol, and has nothing to do with a wine being dry. Now, wines that do have residual sugar, that is, sugar that the yeast did not convert into alcohol before it was done, those wines obviously will be sweet to some extent. So how can you tell if a wine is going to be dry or sweet by looking at the label? It may not say dry and it may not say sweet. Well, here's one clue. Look for the alcohol by volume, which is listed on every wine label. If it's lower, that's a good indication that the wine is going to be sweet. When I say lower, wine normally has, say, like I said, 12 to 15% alcohol in it. If it's 7, 8, 9%, that means that the yeast did not convert all that sugar into alcohol, so there's some left over. The alcohol level's lower, sugar level's higher, and you have a sweet wine. Now, wine from most regions, most producers, is dry by default. What I mean is you don't have to find the word dry on the label to assume this is a dry wine. 95% of the wine out there is dry. There are some exceptions, of course. German wine, for example, is usually sweet unless the label tells you otherwise. It'll say something like trocken, which means it's a dry wine. But that's the exception to the rule. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. We will tackle more of these wine words down the line and keep building up that wine vocabulary. So stay tuned and please share this with your wine-loving friends. Cheers.